Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Writers Guild Foundation's Inside the Writers Room with the Vida Writers Room. My name is Steven Canals, and I am the creator and executive producer of Pose on FX, and I am so excited and so honored to be here today to chat with the incredible creative team behind one of my favorite shows, Vida, which airs on STARZ. Today, we will be chatting with creator, showrunner, executive producer, director, most fabulous human in the world, Tanya Saracho.
Hola.
We also have our co-executive producer, Gladys Rodriguez.
Hello.
Our supervising producer, Esti Giordani.
Hey.
Producer, Jenniffer Gomez.
Hey.
Story editor, Lindsey Villarreal.
Hi.
Script coordinator, Raul Martin.
Hi, everyone.
And our writer's assistant, Christina Nieves.
Hello.
So I am gonna just dive right into conversation. Obviously, we are currently dealing with a global pandemic. In the midst of all of this, we have a solve in Vida currently airing. It's third and final season on STARZ. And so how are all of you feeling? How are you feeling being at home creatively? What has the response been to this third season? Has it been odd sort of dealing with the show being out in the world while we are all still in isolation?
I don't know, I think a lot of people have been able to catch up, like actually watch the show and catch up with seasons that they hadn't because they're at home. So that has been a positive thing, I feel like.
Right. I had more people say like, oh, I saw seasons 1 and 2 and they hadn't seen it before. And then I'm like, well, why did it take a global pandemic for you to catch up on the show? Like, we needed those viewers before. But yeah, it's kind of cool and surprising that people are onto Vida.
What's sad is that we didn't get a closing ritual. We didn't get a premiere party, but also we didn't get closure. Not just about the season, but the series. And that's been weird. Now, what's special about this group of people is they're on my daily thread of, oh my God, there's a new vaccine or not. There's never going to be a vaccine and stuff. So I have access to them every day, I mean, maybe some of them are like, yeah, stop asking about COVID, but it's, but that's.
I was just going to say that too, Tanya. It's I haven't felt alone because we all talk every day. We were on the chats, y'all, this is going to be real. Stay inside, go get masks. Jen, delivered little packages to all of us. We're all still in contact, every day. We're actually close,
Oh, that's amazing. That's really sweet and really special, and obviously speaks to the bond that you all created with one another over the course of 3 seasons. I should note that Vida is a historic show for a lot of different reasons, and was remiss in my introduction in saying that aside from being one of the best reviewed shows in this era of peak TV, it most recently was named one of the 10 best shows by Time Magazine, which was a really special honor. It also won a GLAAD Award for comedy series. And I think one of the reasons why folks talk about the show quite a bit is that the entire writers' room is made up of all Latinx writers. And so before we really dive into clips from the show and hearing from every person about why those clips resonate for them and what the process is in terms of crafting story, Tanya, can you maybe talk a little bit about what was the decision behind making the choice to hire an all Latinx room, and did you receive any pushback from STARZ in making that decision?
I've always just made theater with Latinx. Christina knows because she was an actress in 1,000 of my plays back in Chicago. And so this was just natural to me. Now, I got pushback from people in the community that would be like, why would you do that to yourself? This is when I was still talking about it, still developing, the entire writer's room would be Latinx. And they were like, get the best people for the role, which I found very offensive as a comment, But when it came time to do it, because, and it's a drinking game that I mention Marta Fernandez every time. And he's like, mention Marta Fernandez, drink. You know, she never, I think the last name has a lot to do with, you know, this equation. She never, she didn't just say no, because I was ready. I went into the meeting when I was like, all right, I'm going to bring up Atlanta, because Atlanta has an, you know, all Black writers room. Like I had this whole like argument, and I didn't have to. She slid this list, this giant list of like, yeah, we figured here are all the, you know, Latinx. So I didn't have to fight the fight. And then she had another list of directors. So that was never any, like at STARZ, it was always just known that I would, so there was no fight. It was in the community before when I was like talking about it, which is, yeah, I hope people have changed their minds about that.
And for everyone else, what did it feel like for all of you to be in a room where you weren't having to explain your identity, where you weren't having to prove your worth, where who you are just is?
It's such a different experience.
Yeah.
And I didn't have horror like experiences, you know. I did, I think, come up in like pretty decent rooms previous to Vida, but it's just night and day. Like no matter how inclusive or like friendly rooms like to be, it's just very different to be in a room where like everybody has a sort of similar foundation of like cultural experiences, shared language, you know. Like it feels like family. Like there's, and as corny as that sounds, it's real. Like it just feels like so familiar and so comfortable.
And off of that, I think what I noticed in season 3 is like when you share a common knowledge, then you can get into the nuances of honoring what makes us different. Or when you're in a room where you are one of the only ones of whatever the one is, you try to rep for everybody, and some of those details can get lost that we get to honor on Vida.
Yeah, one of anything is always a bad idea. Like, yeah, I would say that, you know, like Jen, I've had very kind of positive experiences in my come up, mostly queer and female spaces. Like I've been super fortunate, but again, to speak what Christina just said, like I learned so much more about myself on this project than I thought I would. And the ability to negotiate that with my first, like the first person experience, and then with other people and how they see me that share that foundation was just profound in a lot of ways. And I think it really cultivated and generated some just nuanced stories where it is one of those shows where every episode you see a piece of everyone in it because of that negotiation.
Yeah, you can get to better storytelling when you don't have to spend time explaining to everybody in the room why it's important. We all just knew our stories and the details were important, and that we had to get to figuring out what the texture and the layering was, rather than like why I need to see brown people on screen doing this thing, you know? It was easier and faster and more fun, you know? Like I think we all just enjoyed each other by season 3 we were just like secondhand, like it was just like easy. It was so fast.
For me, I guess like sorry, I've come from rooms that, yeah, I've always had to defend Latinx characters and decisions and choices and make sure that they were, you know, not stereotypical. That was my job in the room because I was always the other. I was always the only one. But coming into this room, it was like a breath of fresh air because I felt like there was a shorthand, and like Jen said, it was like a family. And I didn't have those problems in this room as I did in like other rooms. So it was nice to just like tell story, and I think it lended itself to being more creative and having, you know, better stories to tell. So none of the bullshit, you know, it was just like, okay, we're here, we're going to tell our stories, we're going to tell our narrative how we want, and it's just more creative that way.
Well, and I think what all of you have said, for me, that comes through. You know, I just in prep for this conversation, I rewatched the first 2 seasons and have had the opportunity to watch all of the episodes that have aired thus far of the 3rd season. So I haven't completed the 3rd season, but I think what really comes through for me is the love that you all obviously have for not only one another, but for these characters. and for the world. I think the thing that I love so much about the show, outside of really interesting themes around family, whether it's sisterhood, whether it's themes around displacement and obviously gentrification and gentrification, whether it's themes around grief and loss. I also really love the cultural specificity of the show. And again, to me, everything that all of you just articulated, I understand now why those themes resonate so deeply for me, not just as someone who is part of the Latinx community, but because you all have so much love and care for the characters that you're writing. I have one more question before we dive into clips though, and it's connected to something that you all have already shared around the show, which is watching this third season, and I'm only 6 episodes into the 10th, but there's just a sense of urgency this season that I don't know that I felt in the same way watching the first 2. And so I'm curious, did you know going into the third season that this was going to be the last? And did that add to that sense of urgency? Because we obviously didn't know that this global pandemic was going to be happening, for example. And there are very particular issues that you tackle in the third season, whether it's ICE and deportation or DACA, that obviously that's been going on in this country for a while and is important, especially because of this current administration that shows are tackling those topics. But somehow with this pandemic happening right now, this urgency that's embedded in this third season feels even more important to me. So the importance of the show is just exponentially greater. And obviously you didn't know that this all was gonna be happening globally, but I asked that question, like, was there that sense of urgency for all of you all crafting this third season?
Yes, because we knew before, when I got the call for the green light, it was so good news as you're getting green lit. It was a very gentle call, but also you're only getting 6 episodes and you need to come to a stopping point because there won't be a fourth season. So we started with that, the urgency of that. And I think I have them here. I mean, it's not the ones I wrote, but I was like, yo, we have to have 6 masterpieces. Then I put that, I was like 6 masterpieces, which, look, you have to have goals. But it and then we put on a board and a wall, actually, all the stuff that we could not leave without talking about. Stuff that didn't make, we had to whittle it down, but there was stuff that either that we had discussed that we owed, but also stuff that we dreamt, what we wanted to put up there. And there was an urgency to that, and then maybe I'm looking at it, y'all, with rose-colored glasses, but after that, the season was evident. After we pulled that stuff down, it was there was gonna be a quinceañera, or at least at first it was a double quince. Remember, we didn't have the term quinceañera yet, but all that stuff, we pulled it down, and then there was the season. Then we just had to work it out. But it was that wall of urgency was because it was well, we get 6 shots, right? To say everything we want to say. What is imperative?
Right. I feel like, just to add to that, we did have, we don't get this opportunity every day. And this show is special in the sense that it gave us a platform to say whatever we needed to say, which, was important to our community. And so there was an urgency, there's not a lot of shows that do talk about immigration, the way we talk through our point of view. There's not a lot of shows that talk about, grief in the Latinx community, or have the LGBTQ. Luckily your show does, which is, awesome and amazing. But for us, it's just this is urgent, and we don't know when we'll get the opportunity to say anything like this again. So it was a sense of, let's just try to elegantly throw everything out there because we have such limited time to say so much. So yeah, it was an urgent thing, and there was so much more to say, but we didn't get the opportunity.
Well, we're gonna get to say all the things now. I want to start with Jenniffer. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your clip, and then we can dive into it and have a discussion about it.
Okay, so do you want me to set it up, like what it's about? Or, so this is a clip where we see sort of Emma kind of break down in a way that we hadn't seen her. So this is from the first season, the 4th episode, written by the lovely Chelsea Lora. And of course, you know, Tanya touches every single word on every script. But so it was the first moment that we see sort of Emma really break down and kind of reveal to Cruz at the time, but like really to the audience, like where all this anger towards her mother is coming from. And so the motherhood sort of storyline is so important for the series as a whole. So that's why I wanted to make sure we talked about Vida, the mom.
Great. Okay, let's roll the clip.
There you are, desaparecida. I want to be totally basic and get one of those micheladas with the chamoy. Do you want one? Sure. You're having a good time, huh? See, things aren't so bad around here. Hey. You think I don't like it here? That I hate where I grew up? Yeah, that's what I've deduced from all the years you've stayed away, yeah. I never wanted to leave. Villarreal sent me away. Do you know that? One day she found me with Lucy, this little girl that lived in the building, and we were, I don't know, touching, I guess, kissing. And we were like 11, and Vida freaked the fuck out. And there I went to live with Abuelita in South Texas. You never told me that. No, because that's the kind of shit I had to put together later. After I figured out why she sent me back that second time. That time she found fucking poems and journal entries. Why the fuck did I ever keep a journal? It was just... They were all about you. And there went Vida, freaking the fuck out again. By then, it was undeniable what she was freaking out about. Baby, I'm so sorry. Why sorry? Because that pinche hypocrite was still in the closet back then? Had to work out her own fucking gay shame by sending me away? Don't be. I lived happily ever after. Hey.
Great, what a great clip. I want to read a comment that was left in our Q&A box from Viviana Navarro, who wrote, this was the first show where I truly saw myself, especially being a Mexican who was born here and speaks minimal Spanish. I felt like I saw a part of my story, and this show has helped me see that I could also create something with my own voice. Thank you all. Jenniffer, can you tell me why, or tell us why this clip? Why did it resonate for you? Why was this a clip that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons to it, but I think the main one is that for me, that shooting, when we were shooting that scene on set, felt like such a marker for me in sort of my career on Vida, and I'm gonna try to hold it together, y'all. Done enough crying today. So I didn't choose it because I wrote it, you know, I chose it. That was, like I said, Chelsea Lora, but it was so special to me because it reminded me of the first conversations that I had with Tanya about Vida. You know, I was lucky enough to have met Vida right after she was announced to be showrunning the show. and she had just been writing the pilot. And so I was a script coordinator at the time. And so I was like very cleverly, you know, like, oh, can I read it? Like, I'll proof it and make it pretty for you before you submit to STARZ. And she was like, yeah, and tell me what you think. And I was like, okay, great. She wants to actually hear what I think. And so for me, I was beside myself, you know, to be meeting this woman who was Latina, who was queer identifying, and who was like now going to be able to run her own show. And so when I read Por Vida, which is what it was called at the time, my one big thing that I talked to her about was like, he's so Brooke. Brooke was a name that Emma had before. I was like, Brooke just sounds like a little homophobic because, and by the way, so glad that we like get to tell layers of ourselves as Latinx people where like we do show the homophobia, we do show all these things, but I was like, just feels like it should be more complicated like that. Like, and I was like, what if she was queer, you know? And Tanya wanted to do that, and she can speak more to this, but she wasn't sure if STARZ would let her do that. Like if they would like allow her to tell these kind of stories. Luckily, you know, they wanted her to do it. You know, I remember she came back from like her pitch meeting and she was like, guess what? They want Emma to be queer too. Like I get to write it. And so it was like that experience of like finally being on set when we were shooting that and realizing how complicated we made it, that like mom turned out to be queer later on in life, sent, you know, her away when she was young because of it. So it's so such a complicated, nuanced relationship between mother and daughter. And then also that like I was seeing on set the story come to life, the story that Tanya wanted to tell early on that we weren't even sure if we were going to be allowed to tell, you know, on mainstream television. But luckily, you know, I felt like STARZ gave her a gift to be able to do that. You know, Big Beach obviously always like, you know, kind of rooting for her. And then I felt like because of that, she gave us a gift. Like for me to see myself as like a queer Latinx person on screen, you know, in sort of like these very flawed and complicated ways, it was just so satisfying, you know. And I remember that specific set was so tiny because we shot on location, and Tanya like pulled me like behind the monitor, you know, to see it, because there's a scene, like a clip right before them when we saw where there's like a whole 360 around Emma, which was so complicated to shoot, like almost like was it even worth it? I don't know, but like it was so cool to like see how challenging it was for us to see it come together, for me to be part of it, and to remember like, wow, this was all from like a story that Tanya wanted to tell, that luckily all the dominoes lined up for her to be allowed to tell it, you know, and for me to be part of it, it was just so moving
from the beginning. And Queer Television royalty Rose Trochet directed this episode, and that was very special. This like 360 shot that we were like, what? Yeah, it was this was a very special episode. Yeah.
Then we had like Josimar Reyes was there. It was this activist friend of ours. We wanted to get people from the community in the shot. This was like Dona's intro. So Marco, who plays Marcos. So there were like a lot of little special hidden gems within that scene for me.
Well, thank you for sharing it. That's one of my favorite episodes, so thank you. Gladys, would you mind setting up your clip for us?
Yeah, so this this scene was the last scene in one of the episodes I wrote in season 2. It is Lynn in the bathtub, and she basically is broken. And she's, Doña Lupe gave her a spell to do earlier in the day. And she basically, she's doing the spell in this scene, and she breaks the mirror and gets trapped, I guess, inside. But yeah, that's the setup, and then I'll talk about after why I chose this. So
great. Okay, let's roll the clip.
Tus ojos, they seem too much. Tengo este corazón, it beats too much, too much. Mi locura no se cura. no se cura, no se cura. Todo lo que he enterrado.
What a special clip. And Gladys, before you tell us why you chose that clip, I have a question connected to that, which is Lynn is for sure my favorite character on the show. I thought it was Mari for a while, but I really love Lynn. And the thing that I love so much about her, other than the fact that I think we've seen such a beautiful growth in her character, is that she started off as a character that I think very easily could have been written off as like, oh, you know, she's very superficial and she's gorgeous. And what I find so fantastic about her as a character, and it's baked into the pilot. There's a moment where Emma's talking about Eddie and Vida's relationship, and she refers to them as muff divers. And I love that Lynn is like, hold up, you're being really homophobic. And to me, I think that just really set the tone for who she is as a character moving forward. But she's so complicated. And so I was just wondering, before you tell us about specifically why that clip, what has it been like for you to write such a multi-dimensional female character?
For me personally, I mean, I've never written such a layered character. Like, I feel like she has so much backstory, and you know, there's so much to grow from where she started in the very beginning, because you know, she didn't really know herself. Like, she thought she knew herself, but then once she's here at home and coming back home and reuniting with her sister, it's like there's such a rich story to tell there in, you know, in her journey. And so for me, it was such a reward, because not only does she have some of the best, like, funny, you know, light comedic lines, she's kind of like a hot mess, you know, and it's just like, but she's also really deep, and she's just discovering who she is. And I think, you know, for a woman in her late 20s, you know, I can relate to that. It's like, you know, and I think that universally, like, a lot of people can relate to that, because it's like you're just discovering who you are, and you're changing, and you know, whoever you meet, you kind of want to adapt to. And I think this year, she says in this season, she's like, that's one of her superpowers, is she's adaptable. And I think as a writer, I think we all have to be adaptable, you know. And so that's why it was just one of my favorite characters to write, you know, because she was just so fun. And like, the lines that we wrote for Melissa, she just brought so much life to them, and she was so surprising. Like, she would surprise the hell out of you. You know, every time I watched a cut or, you know, heard her deliver the lines that we wrote, it was just like, whoa, I didn't expect her to say, you know, I didn't hear that in my head. But that's when, you know, it's the actor and the writing, it's just a perfect match, you know, and she just elevated it. So that's why I loved writing for her.
Great.
So I chose this clip because it was personal for me, because Tanya and I bonded before the show over our love for, like, brujeria, you know. And like, I think we always, like, talked, and we still do, about like little spells, and like, that's why Doña Lupe's character was so fun for me too. And so I remember pitching this scene in the room where Lynn has to do she was always asking for help, you know, from Doña Lupe. And Doña Lupe tasks her with the spell, like, if you want to, you know, basically cleanse yourself or whatever, you do this salt spell. And I remember telling Tanya, and I pitching to the room, like, there is a brujo that I talked to, and he told me, you know, if you basically want to, let's say however you see yourself, like, let's say you see yourself as emotional or whatever, and you want to stop being emotional, or you want to stop being, like, upset about something, you look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself, like, all the shit that you want to, like, get rid of, basically. And so he had me do the spell, and he's like, okay, just tell yourself in the mirror, and then after that, throw the mirror out. Basically, like, break the mirror, throw the mirror out. And so that evolved into this beautiful scene. So it was my, like, starting the pitch, and then Tanya's, like, addition to it where we have Lynn do this like beautiful like saltwater bath, and she's trying to cleanse herself and trying to be not the porqueria, you know, but ultimately, you know, she is who she is, and she can't necessarily change, you know. So I think it was just, and the music was so beautiful. Last year we had and this year we had Latinx songwriters compose our songs, and that was just such a beautiful moment, and it really was magical. And like the way Janae shot it, it was just one of the most beautiful scenes, probably the most beautiful scene I've ever written and have seen come to life. So it's kind of a nod to Tanya and our relationship and our friendship, but also to the character. So that's why I love this scene, and I hope everyone did too.
That's really special. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why that scene resonated for me as a viewer is that, you know, we have this understanding of the breaking of glass being bad luck, but as a viewer and a lover of the show, and specifically of Lynn's character, I read that moment as a new beginning. And so I love that there's this connection between you and Tanya as well, and what that scene represents in terms of your relationship, because in so many ways your relationship was, you know, it was at the start, right, and led to that moment. So that's really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Esti, would you tell us about your clip?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to highlight kind of the moment of the comedy of the show, just because I think we have just such beautiful kind of these poignant moments, but there's also, particularly with Lynn, just these really great comedic moments that can happen. So the setup is that the sisters are kind of worlds apart, and Lynn chases Emma to this club that Nico's taking her to. It's his after hours party. And of course, Lynn goes with Marcos, who gives her a little something, something, you know, things happen. Maybe she's starting to feel a little tingly, but she's just had this epic fight with Emma. So they're kind of in a liminal space for both of them, that they're both alien in having these intense emotional experiences with each other, but also the space. So this is kind of like the heart of the party scene, where you see Lynn finally break out of this space. And it's very funny, but I think that there is like a tenor of grief to it as well, which is my favorite kind of comedy. So
Awesome. Well, let's roll the clip.
Okay, I love you too.
Quisiera bailar, quisiera salir contigo. Something comes spilling out of me. If I go right now, I'll have to go. I'll be back. Vete aquí conmigo. Juntos los tres, volábamos. Hoy sola ni puedo parar. human necessity. Hey!
Such a funny scene. I love that scene.
Yeah, I mean, and I think for me, and something we kind of spoke to about the show is that, you know, that was a community of artists that I had really loved and followed. So Sancha, the performer, is someone that I've known since she was 18. We were both living in the Bay Area. It was just kind of this, you know, Tanya really has privileged us with this experience to not only tell our stories, but to tell our stories with the people who were there with us along the way. So it was a very beautiful kind of like full circle moment in that regard. And then again, as someone who kind of came up in spaces like that party, often the buffoon that would pee in a sink, that was art. It just allows that opportunity of these kind of queer spaces that where the girls are that are just are incredibly intimidating yet incredibly inclusive, and that in this space these two girls could actually like have a neutral ring to have it out. And Lynn's escape from that was always my favorite.
Can you, we have about 22 minutes and we still have a couple clips left, but can you just very quickly tell me what advice would you give to a young Latinx writer who hopes to one day be in a writer's room, who maybe frequented those same spaces as you did?
I mean, I'm going to say that this is the hardest question because it's one of the hardest questions that you are currently doing, whoever asked this question or whoever is at this point in their career. I did not think that this was an option for me as kind of a mass presenting person in any way. I'd never pursued writing in like a real way until you know, in my late 20s, and then I tried to take it seriously and I took every opportunity I could. And if I didn't feel like I could do it, I just said yes to everything. And if it was like, oh shit, like I was a queer dog walker and like working at a nonprofit at the same time, trying to write at the same time, trying to have internships at the same time. But really allowing yourself to say yes to everything, but the reality of your circumstance is real, and I drop F-bombs all the time, so it's very hard. But I would also say be pushy and tenacious. When I was an assistant for a kind of showrunner who was like, Jill Soloway, shout out, gave me my first staffing gig. And it was those people that I found really annoying in Jill's inbox that I ended up working with and loving. And that's something I never had. I never felt like I could be that person that kept emailing and emailing and DMing and emailing, but that stuff works. So I would really like, even if it feels wrong, like I'm all about peacocking, presenting a confidence that does not exist within me. And I really think that, you know, you all who are kind of coming up should gift that to yourselves.
Oh, that's great advice. And thank you for being persistent.
Oh, and also, can I just do it? I know we have short
Yes.
time, but like, Steven, I love your work. This is such an amazing moment to meet you in this way. Like, it's just, it's so cool. And then shout out to the Vida fam. I see you all in the chats. Okay, bye.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you too. And I know this won't be our last conversation. Christina, why don't you tell us about your clip?
Sure. So this clip is from 304, the third season, fourth episode, which was written by Esti and also channeled by Tanya, of course. And this episode is iconic, and history will prove that to be so for many, many reasons. But this is just a simple scene between Lynn and her, spoiler alert, father who has returned. And I'll speak about why it, I think, is a cool touch point for the character at this point of the whole series. And also my background in the theater and in playwriting, like why those like two-person scenes where you just get to sit down and have a heart-to-heart always make me happy. So
Great. Let's roll the clip.
I just like literally can't do anything right. Nothing is good enough for that woman.
Mastica, mija, don't forget to chew.
How did I forget that bologna's kind of great? Sorry, Miss Becky. How do I get her to like me?
How do you know she doesn't?
Poppy, women, we know these things. And that woman hates me. And now, can't do anything right with Rudy either.
Are you two fighting?
Sort of. I don't know. This morning I offended him by mistake. Nothing I do is good enough.
Mija, in God's eyes, you already are good enough. You're perfect. Justo como tú eres. Don't worry. Things are gonna work out.
They never have before. You don't know this because you don't know me yet, but I don't exactly have the best track record when it comes to relationships.
I do know you, Mija. And shoot, join the club. Do you think your puppy has a spotless record? Oh, Mija, bad decisions run in the family. Oh, no. Look at us. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. Proverbs 31:25. Don't let your past define you, mujercita. You're being tested, but that's the beauty of a life in Christ. Once you accept him as your Lord and Savior, then you make the decision, the very purposeful decision, to be made new, wash it all away, to walk the righteous path, to pass that test. And guess what happens then?
What?
Then you have nothing to fear. Huh? Clothed in strength and dignity, she laughs without fear of the future. Steady in your path, Lynn. Fearless, huh?
Love that.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes.
Third season, Christina was like so important to all the church scenes because of her background, of her everything, the scripture, the everything. So like, she's
Yeah, all I gave her in that was a bologna sandwich. Like, and then Christina really pulled something out of that.
It's just very, yeah, every time, all of us heathens, not really, but we were like, Christina, what would, you know, and she had answers for it. So yeah.
Thank y'all. I picked this for so many reasons. I think it's such a cool reflection point for the character of Lynn to think about where we started her in the pilot to this point. Like, she was vegan, she was this hot mess, she was, you know, doing all kind of shenanigans, and now she's born again. It's like, what an arc for a character and where we took her. And I think, like, talking about all the ways that Vida has represented all of us in all of these ways that feel so singular and special, whether it's being queer, whether it's being, you know, Latinx, Mexican American, Chicano, all of these things, an immigrant. I think for me, the role that religion has played in my life is so complicated as a woman, as someone queer. So the fact that we told that story in this season and showed that it's complicated and there are ways that can really bolster you, and that scripture and that church and that structure and that kind of community can be such a solve for pain and give you direction and give you healing, but that it can also be so constricting and so confusing and so hateful and so evil, and that both of those things can be true, because I think a lot of times we only allow one or the other to exist, and so we really tried to speak to both sides of that, and that was something I was really proud of in watching the show back.
No, you brought up a really great point. I don't want to take up too much time, but I think the thing that I really love about the arc with Lynn and her father this season, and obviously I haven't finished the full season yet, is that beautiful juxtaposition between Lynn as a character who in Gladys' scene, we see her, right, where she's breaking the mirror, and it has to do with brujeria, and we've seen her get limpias in the show, and to have that juxtaposed with, you know, religion, religiosity was really, really fascinating and interesting. Religion in the traditional sense.
Right.
I thought that was, I love the way that the story is unfolding this season. And I think that your clip is just another example and model of seeing Lynn growing up, you know? So.
Mm-hmm. And it shows her heart that like she's always seeking and she's always wanted to do the right thing. And she's just always trying to find what that is, you know?
Yeah. She's inquisitive and curious in the way that we all are. And I love that she represents that.
Yeah.
You know, and gives, I think in a lot of ways, I'm curious to hear from, I guess for anyone who's watching, you can sort of comment on this in the comments, but at least for me, there's a lot of freedom in seeing her curiosity. You know, I don't know that we always give enough credit to the people who are inquisitive in the world and ask questions and make mistakes because they explore. And the thing I love so much about Lynn is that whether it's for good or for bad, regardless of how messy things may become, she's always exploring. And I think that there's a freedom for the audience in seeing her do that.
I love that sentiment. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that clip, and thank you for all that you brought to the Vida room.
Y'all, stop it.
Raul, tell us about your clip.
Hello. My clip is a preview of the finale of next episode on Sunday, so it's super important. I chose the clip, well, it's basically, we saw Mari last week kind of ending her story with Vigilantes and needing something else. So the reason I chose this is because we see her moving on to something maybe bigger, and I thought it was perfect for finale.
Perfect. So spoiler alert for those folks.
It is.
And let's roll the clip.
This is your girl, La Pinche Chinche. At this very moment, the U.S. government is caging brown children, separating them from their parents. This is pinche humanity touching an all-time low. And shame on us, mi gente. Shame on all of us for allowing our representatives to look the fuck away. We have to act
now. So emotional watching this.
I have
yeah.
I'm sure it is emotional because it's the end. You know,
but Mari's, I think this show was such a big platform that gave voice to real issues that affect the Latinx community. And Mari, of all the characters, I feel like she's the one that brings all these conversations that non-Latinx people and Latinx allies like myself were having. And it's so important that we see conversations about what atrocities ICE is doing right now, and what was doing, separating kids, actual kids from families. And I remember us as a room going to downtown and protest for it while we were writing about this. So everything was such a circle. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm losing it right now. But everything was such a circle for us, and this scene represents this evolution and this arc on Mari and wanting to do those things to move forward and do something great for all of us, for her community.
Yeah, Mari is a very, very close second favorite character. You know, pretty equal to Lynn, and she's the character that we meet first in the pilot, and she is the person who I think consistently forces us to confront our own politics.
She's
which
the chorus.
Say that again, Tanya?
She's the chorus. the Shakespearean
is.
chorus that sets up the whole world. Yeah.
And I love that about her. And so my question for Raul and Tanya, you can jump in as well, is we have a question from someone. They wrote, "Thank you for writing Latinx characters that don't exist to serve any stereotypes." And to me, Mari is like kind of the epitome of that. You know, I love that she stands for what she believes in. She stands in that truth with 2 feet, and no one is going to push her away from it. So what do you hope other shows take as, the question is, what do you hope other shows take as learnings from the legacy and influence of Vida? But I kind of want to even take that a step further. I think maybe more specifically thinking about Mari and her arc throughout this series. What do you hope people take away as learnings from her as well?
You know, Chelsea, who I think is Chelsea Rendon, who plays Mari, might be in the chat, and she always gets really bothered, as do I, that they always say, "Oh, you play the chola. You play the chola," because we have seen such few depictions of us on TV that like, no, this is what an activist, this activist looks like. But like, because you only have a few, like, you know, categories to fit us, you know, this is the chola. And I love that I hope we've complicated that for people. No, this imagery you see, the blue lipstick and the pompa and the bandana, like that's not what that is, you know? So I love, just first, I'm saying that for you, Chelsea, who's watching. But also I just, this notion that you like come out of the womb a chingona is not real. And I love that Mari, we watch her, like the thing that trips her up are the men, the patriarchy in her life, the guy she likes, her brother, her father. And you're watching her struggle with the patriarchy with a capital P that's bigger than her, but she's still, and spoiler, she's still gonna be fine, you know? She's gonna battle it. And that like, that it's not just like you're, you know, chingona with a capital C, you just come out. I love Mari too. Oh my God, that made me crazy.
We filmed that scene and the last scenes with Mari the same day, and I remember you could feel on set that it was the end, because we were all, the actors came to see her. We were all like a big family. Wardrobe gave us hankies, so we could all look like Mari that day, and we were all being Mari that day. And I thought that was so, Jen. It was very special. It was such an amazing day, and yeah, it also obviously ties with my journey here, starting as a writer's PA, then assisting Tanya was one of the best things I have done ever, and then she was kind enough to give me the script coordinating gig. So yeah, this show has been so important for a lot of people, and we are sisters. We had a witch telling us that we are sisters in a past life.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's another show. Let's get that greenlit.
Curly Velasquez used to say, "Oh my God, I would watch a show with you two just talking and having coffee or tea."
Listen, I love a talk show, so let's make that happen. Well, thank you, Raul, for your work.
Thank you, Steven. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you for your emotions too. It's appreciated.
Please.
Okay, so we have about 5 minutes, but I guess if we go over time, oh well. So Lindsey, tell us about your clip.
My clip is gonna make Tanya cry. It is the last scene of the first episode of the first season, which I was not on the first season. I only came on in the second. And when I saw this clip, I was in the premiere, like I had bought tickets for the premiere before I even got the job. So like when Tanya, like, cause they were offering it up to like people online, I forget how I got them. But when I saw it, I was in a theater with a bunch of other people, and I had brought a friend with me, and I was waiting to hear back. Actually, I'd had a FaceTime interview with Tanya, and then I was supposed to have an interview with Jen like a couple days later, which I was like, oh God, why are they making me meet another writer? Holy crap. But, which Jen doesn't even remember meeting me, so don't ask her about it. But she
remembered after.
No, she didn't. She did not remember. So I picked it because I was crying in the theater as I watched this, and I was like, oh my God, I hope they hire me for this show. So just to like set it up, it's the girls have just gone through the day of their mother's funeral. All this like drama has happened throughout the day, and Emma has really, really been like not trying hard not to feel anything all episode. That's the show. That's the show I signed up for and that I like wanted to make from the minute I saw it. And honestly, sitting in that theater, I was like, holy fuck, like homegirl grew up in the same space. I'm from San Antonio. Tanya grew up in McAllen, from Mexico, but grew up in McAllen, which is not very far from San Antonio. It just felt like me. This show, and I was like, I can tell that story. I can tell those characters. And I got hired in season 2 as a script coordinator, and Tanya really like made my career and like made me the story editor this season. She did not have to, but it felt like me and my sister growing up, who is watching and said she wanted credit for this frame that she put me in today. But it felt like me and my sister, like we have gone through really hard times with our parents or with our dad especially. And that moment, like Tanya always says I write Lynn the best, but I feel like Emma. Like I feel like I don't want to feel anything when it comes to stuff that's hard in my life. And that scene made me break down in the theater. You know, my friend like was a little scared. She was like, oh shit, you're really feeling shit right now. You know, so like it just resonates for me. It's this show that I was like, I got to work on that. I can tell that story. And, you know, people ask me all the time, like I write like action horror stuff, like when I'm not working on Vida. So people are like, how does that come together for you? And it's like, well, I like genre stuff, but I can write people I know. And I know all these people. I know all these characters. I've heard them speak. They're us. They're everybody in these boxes. They're, you know, people we grew up with, people we love right now, people we want to love. It speaks to me, you know. Tanya spoke to me.
The scene I heard that you picked it. I was, because I was the only one. Like I was like, I want to pick it, but I want to say that I wrote this when I was recovering from surgery, and I could only really use one hand, really. And I was and so when we shot it, I had this meltdown because I was like, oh my God, I'm walking and I'm watching it being shot beautifully, you know, by these two and also like Meli and Mish and I were like starting out, you know, it was like our first, you know, it was like the beginning, you know, and there were the possibilities were endless, you know, it seemed like in that day. But I remember being on opiates when I was and really hurting, you know, when I wrote that. And so that scene was very important to me, not just because I'm a Tejana and Selena, and she cost us so much money to get.
So much money. That's
why we had to do the scoring, because we couldn't afford it any longer than that. It was $36K. I was like, we couldn't afford to go. I wanted to go out on that song. We couldn't afford it, but it was
but you know what it is too, is like, that was the first time I had seen, like Selena's always canonized as this like epitome thing. And that was the first time I had seen people responding to her, right? Not an image of her, but in the feeling that you get when you're playing her music and when she's in the background. Like that was the first time I had seen characters living this idea of what Selena means to the culture in their own lives, you know. And Gladys knows, Gladys worked on the Selena series, but like it means so much to the culture. And that was the first time I'd seen someone having an experience with her, you know.
And I knew that because that was in the script, you know. I knew that song right away, because you're like hearing it from the hallway. You don't even know, but it's doing something, right? Yeah. Like even it's a bitty bitty bong bong, and then you get in there, and then you add the crying of an Emma who's been calling her mother a cunt and all these things, but like that bitty bitty bong bong is like gut, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to the moment, because it's not just Emma's catharsis at the end of this episode where she's been so wound up and holding all her emotions in, but you know what that song lends to that scene and that moment for the audience, maybe even more so than for Emma, is the legacy of Selena, you know? Like, we all come in knowing what her journey was too. So you bring all of that in with you as well. And so it's such a beautifully constructed pilot. But you know, that's, I've told you a million times.
Opiates.
Well,
Just kidding.
yeah. Thank you, Gladys and Esti and Jenniffer and Lindsey and Raul and Christina for those clips. And thank you for walking us through the journey of moments that have meant the most to you while working on Vida. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say to my friend, my colleague, someone who I deeply, deeply admire, Tanya Saracho, like, thank you so much for creating this beautiful jewel box of a show. As I will say publicly to everyone who's watching, it's my father's favorite show on TV, and he consistently will call to talk about it and to tell me about it, and I pretend not to be offended by the fact that I also make television. But he loves the show so much, and I think he and I, like many people, are really sad that we have to say goodbye and let these characters go. And so before we end, I would just love if everyone could kind of just very quickly tell me, like, what is next for you? Like, what are you either working on next, or what are you sort of excited to do next?
Tanya was like, let's drink.
And we'll start with Gladys.
Exciting.
So Gladys, why don't you tell us, like, what's next for you? What is that sort of on your docket?
Well, right now I'm developing like one project that is, my first like Latinx led show. And I think I was able to do this because of the show. So I am really excited about that. Who knows what'll happen, but I'm excited to do it. And, I'm just going to ride the wave and see where the wave takes me. Because right now, who knows? But I'm really excited. I feel very positive about the future. And, I'm sure I will keep creating. So I'm really excited to see what's next.
Thank you. Esti, what's next for you?
Been keeping very busy with Zoom life, as I'm sure many of you are. So that seems to be the only thing literally in front of me. But yeah, development on some things. Really, I've just had such a great experience kind of coming up in Hollywood, like atypical experience, and really meeting people along the way that I've worked with, get to continue to work with. So I really do hope that with this group here that kind of maintain that tradition that I've been so lucky to have. But definitely some things in development and some cool rooms, all things that are not out and open to the public yet, but
cool.
Very excited about them.
Awesome. Jenniffer.
It's so hard to say because I'm such a present person. And so now I'm in the present moment of COVID that it's so hard to see beyond that. Like, when is Hollywood going to reopen? When are we going to be able to do the stuff that we love again? But with that said, I am trying to stay creative, and I've been writing a pilot for Blumhouse that they picked up called Infiltrators, about a group of undocumented youth infiltrated a detention center. So I love that happens to be my next project, because we end Mari with that that beautiful scene that Raul chose. So to me it feels like almost like a link for myself, personally, like having ended Vida and sort of ending on that note, and then taking off with a story that kind of goes in that trajectory, that isn't about real people doing real things, important work. So hopefully that is a project that, that will be my home, and we'll see other, working on some other development, obviously. We'll see what happens.
Right. Lindsey.
I just finished a Netflix show that's big, and I can't tell you what the name of it is, but it's the big show. It'll be out sometime when they can shoot it. We've gotten kind of delayed. So hopefully sometime next year. And then a bunch of development stuff that's really this show's given me a lot of confidence to just really dive into projects that are Latinx, with Latinx leads, with Latinx characters, and not be afraid to change something in some like existent IP, or like pitch a new take on something that's like more culturally driven. And I think people are open to that, and people really are hearing it right now. So, I mean, again, like, thank you, Tanya, but like, I think that this show has opened a lot of doors for a lot of executives, especially, who are the people we need to get to hear this, is that we want to tell our stories, and they're not all stories about, just maids and janitors and like whatever stereotype you want to think. Esti says this all the time, is like the diaspora of stories within the Latinx community is so large. And I think about that all the time.
That's great, thank you. Raul, what's next for you? Or what would you like to be working on next? Either one.
I just wrapped a Netflix show for Eva DuVernay as a script coordinator. I outlined a feature very recently, which is kind of like out of my alley, so I'm very excited about that. And I'm waiting for staffing, ladies and gentlemen. Get me, hire me.
Stab him, he's amazing.
All of us too, you too, me too, girl.
I love it.
Thank you, Steven.
Thank you. And Christina, what's next for you?
Well, speaking of what Lindsey said, opening doors, the show has opened doors. She has arrived. I staffed on a show. And
Congratulations.
Which I'm happy to be able to publicly say, and I will say forever and all time, I owe so much of that to Tanya. She gave me my first ever job in this, like, professionally, period, as an actor, but then also in this world, once I just started writing, she gave me my first job as a writer's assistant, and has always supported me and just held me close and taught me so much, and I owe her so much. So yes, and every single person in this square has supported me, and they're all the real deal. I'm sure you are too, Steven. Abby here. So I'm writing. I'm a staff writer on a show at HBO Max.
Fabulous. Well, congratulations. So I think the final word obviously should go to our creator, showrunner, Tanya. And I would just like to say that I really truly believe that as time goes on, obviously, the art always remains. And I think sometimes you go back to art and, you wonder why you love something as much as you did. But I think that as time goes on, folks will continue to visit Vida, and this is one show that really will last the test of time. I think it's a really special show that whenever there's any Latinx person in this community, being Hollywood, looking to find inspiration, they'll certainly look to you and to this show. And I think that for young Latinx people out in the world looking for content where they truly feel represented, especially if they're at the intersection of being Latinx and queer, they will also have your show. So thank you for that. And obviously the show was created in your perfect image. And so, I want to leave the final words with you to share with us what it's meant to work on this show, and what you hope the legacy of Vida is.
I'm very emotional. I hope it was a marker, that when you look back at our history in this industry, you're like, oh, and that's when Vida was. And then after Vida, that's what came. I hope it engenders complicated, daring stories. Now I'm okay with 3 seasons. 3 seasons to tell a story is, as we wanted to tell it, is a luxury, a privilege. And I mean, I hope it's not for future generations. My friend Gloria and I always say we're eating this shit so that Marvin and Linda don't have to, and gentrified creators, But that's the sentiment, is like, hopefully this opens some doors. I'm too close to it right now. I'm too raw, and we're about to end, But I want to toast, if you not to like the audience, but just to the writers, the midwives, the coven, that I love you all like family, sometimes more than some of my family, and I'm indebted to you. Salud.
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 Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you for your art. Thank you for your words. Thank you for your contribution to this medium of TV. Thank you for being willing to open up your heart spaces, not just today, but really for the last 3 seasons. And as I said, the work remains. And so we'll always have these 3 seasons to come back to. So thank you for creating, as I said, this beautiful jewel box of a show. And as Tanya said, I really, truly, I agree. I believe that the industry has been changed, and we'll continue to see the ripple effects. So thank you so much for Vida.
Thank you, Steven, for this, for being such a good madrina. Thank you.
Thank you, Steven.
Thank you, Steven.
We love the show.
Thank you.
We hope to watch it.
Such a fan.
Thank you.